the Heard Museum. In the Grand Gallery, there is an exhibition from Leon Polk Smith, and it's called Hiding in Plain Sight. A little bit about Leon: he was from Oklahoma, so he grew up in the Midwest and around indigenous people. He later moved to New York City, became well known in the abstract scene there. So his work is very large, very colorful, very interesting, something that my students, I think, would really appreciate, as well as learning about abstract art. Leon said he was influenced by traditional Native American art, and those are reflected in his pieces. The next exhibit is Away from Home, American Indian Boarding School Stories. This is a running exhibit since 2000, and it examines the importance of the unknown period of time in American history beginning in the 1870s, when the U.S. government assimilated American Indians into the civilized society by placing them in government-operated boarding schools. This exhibit always resonates with me as I'm now in Phoenix, but I did grow up on a Native American reservation in Lawrence, Michigan. This exhibit is really well done. There's lots of readable graphics, information, lots of quotes, and then huge pictures from that time period, so you can really get a well understanding of what it looked like and the amount of children that were impacted, families as well. This exhibit, of course, doesn't focus so much on art, although it does have some of the art that some of the students made at art schools. But it is an interesting exhibit. It's got lots of real clothing and pieces for students to learn about. The Grand Procession is a contemporary Plains Indian doll exhibit. It celebrates an exceptional collection of dolls, also known as soft sculptures, and it was created by Jamie Okuma, Rhonda Holybear, and 3 generations of her family. I think this is a great exhibit that students would be very interested in looking at, something that they can relate to and they might pique their interest. A lot of kids are into dolls or figurines, so this would be a great exhibit to take students to. These dolls are full of detail, from their heads to if they're on a horse or their clothing. There are 23 dolls in the exhibition, and it's the largest private collection of its kind. And the All at Once, the Navajo weaving exhibit, was what I came for mostly. The other exhibits were interesting as well, but I am very into teaching my students about Navajo weaving, so this was something that I really wanted to visit. So this collection was donated by Mark and Julie Dalrymple, longtime members of the Heard Museum. They focused their collecting of textiles on the first 2 decades of the 21st century and traveled throughout the Southwest, visiting leading galleries, art fairs, including the Heard Museums and the Indians Fair and Market Guild. Along the way, they met many artists, took pictures, they collected these weavings. They're not focused on any particular style, and so it succeeds in capturing the creativity that is what you'll find in present-day weavers. So along with some of the more traditional style of weavings, this exhibit does have a lot of contemporary weavings, which I think students would really enjoy and make a lot of connections to, like this piece with the skateboarder. or this piece with a face. There's just a lot of great weavings in this exhibit. This is one of my favorite pieces. I think kids would really, really love this one and still appreciate the technique and the effort that it took to make these. The other nice thing about this museum is that they do have a lot of Navajo weaving, but as we leave this exhibit, you will see a lot of other Native American work that does involve weaving as well. North American, South American, Latin America, Native American work that still uses weaving, not just in rugs. So there are other Native American exhibits. This one was donated by Byron Harvey in 1971, and it is Southwest and the Plains. These pieces are very familiar to me. I grew up with a lot of beadwork, attending many powwows, growing up in Lance. All the dancers would make their own dresses and do lots of their own beadwork. And this is from the Ojibwa tribes, and that's the tribe that is where I'm from. I think having these real pieces are really interesting to look at, where kids could actually see the beadwork or see these pieces and get a better understanding versus just a picture in a book. They do have a small exhibit from the Pacific Northwest and a variety of textiles, hats, carvings from them. I think this is interesting because they can compare and contrast with all of these different cultures. So these are some textiles and some paintings, hats, pieces from Latin America. I think it's nice to have it next to the Pacific Northwest and the Plains Indians pieces because they can see similarities but also see the differences. So here you have some hats from Latin America and some hats from the Pacific Northwest right next to each other. Easy, something you could compare and contrast. There are a lot of other exhibits as well. I kind of shot them quickly so that I could get to the weaving exhibit. There's also a small wonders exhibit that had a lot of very small metal pieces. I thought that was interesting because normally you do think of pottery and textiles when you think of Native American art. So it was interesting to see some of these metal 3D pieces. Interesting contemporary exhibit, Behind the Mask, Indigenous Artists Speak Out. So this was a way for Indigenous artists to express how the pandemic is affecting them, as they are one of the highest COVID infected groups in the country. And of course, if you'd like to buy a rug in the gift shop, you can if you are ready to spend $700 to $1,000. The bookshop is a little bit more up my alley, so I purchased some quick books and I headed home.